Hi, my name is King Sakhile Mthembu, and I'm the owner and founder of the private government Alpha Umbrella. Um, Alpha Umbrella is an upcoming private government that is set on uniting various different populations from around the world and finally putting together different governmental solutions in order to help govern the poor and those who are poverty stricken and currently who are facing issues of humanitarian crisis, especially where the constitution and where human rights are concerned. Um, Without further ado, I just want to point out that I do understand that for the past 3 years, our planet or our world rather, has been plagued with a lot of very negative governmental circumstances that have made it very difficult for governments in order to control and govern the masses. And one of these main issues that contributed to such high emotional stakes is COVID-19, of course, the biggest pandemic ever since the Black Plague. And with that being said, I think we all noticed the colossal scale of the effects of this pandemic. Um, but with COVID slowly easing its way out of our lives, we are slowly starting to remember the lives that we were living before COVID hit. And the lives that we were living were more intimate than the social distancing that COVID actually tried to enforce within the daily lives of members of society. But anyway, moving on to what what I'm making this video about. I am moving on to something that needs a little more empathy, empathy that can only be given by us human beings. And one of these issues, this issue that I'm talking about, is an issue that took place last year. So, as you remember, in 2001, the United States of America was hit by Afghanistan terrorists, of which we know to be the leader of it was the Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. And when the way that America was hit was not covert, it was actually overt, it was a straight up attack. And we are now in 2022. In September, the 11th, it would have been 21 years since this incident of 9/11. For those of you who are too young to even remember what happened, on the 11th of September 2021, two airplanes flew into two different towers, which we used to call the World Trade Centers. And both the towers came down because of these airplanes. And these airplanes were hijacked by terrorists from the east, and especially when we say the east, I'm being specific, from Afghanistan, by the leader of the Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, who is from a Muslim, who is Muslim of religion origins, and the suicide bombers who have been associated with his terroristic attacks are jihadists as well, who are from this Muslim religion. Now, this Muslim religion, it's a little confusing to the rest of the world, especially to people who have not done any research or investigation as to what this Muslim religion is about. And I mean, I'd just like to kind of break down before I get into the main topic of this video. But I mean, the Muslim religion is very difficult to understand because their Quran is in dialects in which us English-speaking people, or us people who use letters of the Greek English alphabet, we don't understand those dialects, you know. So whether you Zulu or Tswana, it's not the same dialects that that the Muslim religion uses. I mean, we have we have other languages as well in the world that have dialects that we don't understand, like Chinese, Japanese, Russian. Those are dialects that us as English speakers, or who communicate with the main international language, which is English, we do not understand. So it is very difficult for us to place ourselves in positions where we can say us and the followers of the Muslim religion speak the same language. Without wasting further any time, I mean, without wasting any more time, obviously one would then say it is our responsibility in order to understand and read, understand these dialects and teach ourselves. But in this world, in this 21st century that we live in, English being the main language, the big chase is not to learn such Eastern languages, but it is to unify the world with one language that everyone understands, which is Africans from Africa, white people from Africa, Africans from North America and South America, whites from North America and South America, and everyone else around the world is connected with English. So when we have an issue where the young militant terroristic group that is called the Taliban impose on human rights, and further on influencing the relationships of trade that the rest of the world has with innocent civilians of the Afghanistan country, the world is forced to actually respond to the outcries that victims of this oppression, of this violation of human rights are going through. And the victims of this violation of human rights are none other, the primary victims are the Muslim women who are bound by governmental law to this religion, and they are oppressed by a simple single simple single garments, which we known as the hijabs, burqas, and niqabs. So this garment has always been part of the Muslim tradition. I mean, I know growing up, we had Muslim girls who we used to go to school with, who used to wear these garments. And I remember how, well, I mean, looking back, I would see a lot of them. And because you know how children used to be, they used to make fun of them. And so many times would ask questions as to why are you wearing this? And you know, when I finally think back, I can tell you now that the poor child back then did not understand as to why they are wearing it. And today, almost about 25 years later, um, we are faced, us as the leaders of the world, we are faced with an issue where the same woman, or the same little girl who I went to school with has now relocated in Afghanistan and now is staying in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, she is unhappy with the way the Taliban law is enforcing Muslim laws strictly upon women in order to control them. So the Taliban took over on August. I'm not sure, is it the 21st of August 2021, which was last year, just after the U.S. Army what took back or recalled their soldiers and left for their home country. The last soldiers that were actually protecting the defenders of the Constitution were remained just after the major recall back home, and then just to make sure that some of those who probably seek asylum and so forth were able to be in safety, and some of the journalists as well who were covering the news and the crisis of the Taliban takeover. Um, but the Taliban takeover is not something that the world celebrated with enthusiasm. That is simply because within the first week of their takeover, more than 700,000 jobs were lost. Within the first week of their takeover, practically all the human rights were thrown out of the window. Within their first takeover, almost all the women were forced to stay indoors as per Muslim law. And the major law, in order to make sure that the mass was being controlled, was to ensure that women are the primary followers of the Muslim Quran law. And what is being done to these women currently right now, they are facing issues where the Taliban militant law is enforcing the garments on these women, so much so that if these women are found or are seen not wearing this Muslim garment, their husbands can either be fired from their jobs, or they can be suspended from their jobs for a minimum of 3 days. I think that's actually the first warning. So it's suspension, fired, and then obviously, because the Muslim law in this regard is not practiced with any form of godliness, the jihadist in them is probably going to take over, which means that the husband may be killed just because the woman is not wearing this garment. And mind you, this woman does not have a job in order to take care of herself after her husband has been possibly killed or threatened, or any of those tactics that instill fear within the Afghanistan population. So there are a couple of things that we do not understand. I am now, because of the adoption of the Constitution, and the origins of the Constitution, and the and understanding that the Constitution brings about the platform of democracy. We can already start to see that the areas of democracy within the governance of this Taliban are completely absent. So we're just going to go through a couple of things just to kind of, in layman's term, understand what this whole thing, what this Taliban militant Muslim group is all about. Okay, so the Taliban flag is different from the flag of the Afghanistan you'll notice the inscriptions on that the flag is actually a flag of inscriptions, and it is not a flag that is adopted by the Afghanistan as a national flag. This flag is actually a militant flag of the Islam religion. So in a sense, you can say it is the military. The Taliban is the military of the Muslim religion. Right. So we can assume that the Taliban stands for the governmental philosophies of all Muslims across the world. And with this hypothesis, I would like to conclude that I don't think all Muslims across the world condone the implementation or the way this religion is implemented. So the flag is a militant symbol of the government, of the Muslim government, and it actually reads La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasul Allah. Okay, that's what the flag reads. I'm going to read it again. It reads La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasul Allah. Translated, it means in English now, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. At the moment, right now, I do not understand how this message is militant. So the language dialects of what's written that we don't understand versus English and other nations that adopt democracy. So because of the militancy of this flag, it is very difficult for democracy to unify the practice of this religion with, say, Christianity, because of the lack of moral ethics that the Taliban has taken to adopt when practicing this religion. Okay. How is this religion a government? This religion is a government through the fact that its soldiers and its soldiers are diehard soldiers who are suicidal. And they are suicidal because of the promises that come from this religion once a person has passed on. These beliefs are that when you die for a cause, you die for your family. In fact, beyond your family, you actually die for this religion. So the belief in the Muslim religion as a jihadist is that you die for the cause, and once you die, there's a reward for you in heaven. And this reward, I know it might sound like a spiritual anomaly, but this religion entails that when you die, you are actually rewarded with up to 10,000 virgins in heaven. And, you know, as a Christian and as someone who practices democracy on a day-to-day basis, we can already start to hear how delusional this belief is. But I mean, as much as I can try and say I do understand, I am not going to say that I do understand, because there is no there is no reality about winning or being rewarded with 10,000 virgins in heaven. So so anyway, that is what the jihadists believe, right? Moving on, the same the same tactics that are used in order to make women feel inferior are the same tactics that are used in order to make men feel superior. With this Taliban and the Muslim religion, Questions that are asked is, why can't women participate in politics, voting, attain jobs like other women do around the rest of the world? Um, in the Muslim religion, um, women are meant only to take care of the family. Women are raised as the helpers of the men. So they take on a less democratic style, but on a more religious religious and chauvinistic style that convinces women that they are lesser than men, and because they are lesser than men physically now, that means that they do not have the same strong muscles that men have, of which that is why they are receiving the lower hand. Because of that, they are made to believe that they are less intelligent, and their opinion is of no significance. So women are not allowed to vote. Women are not allowed to take part in politics. Women are not allowed to get jobs or have jobs. If there is jobs, they're probably just working from home. During the day, they're working for their I mean, they're waiting for their husbands to bring food, to bring money, those sort of things. Even their sons have more political power. Their teenage sons have more political power than their own mothers and than their own sisters and that sort of thing. So already, with women not being allowed to participate in politics and participate in voting and attain jobs, already democracy in this instance is thrown out of the window, of which of which these women have been crying out, and there have been journalists in from the BBC and Sky News who have been listening to their cries and trying to understand how in what way they can help. All right. So we also move on to ask a question as to, if women are prevented from societal participation, then what purpose do they serve? I spoke to someone, actually a close friend of mine. This question was very difficult for me to answer, but the answer that he gave me is they serve as puppets. With this answer, by serve as puppets, I didn't really understand but what he meant, but with just a slightly deeper scrutiny, by puppets we're talking about mass control, and also by puppets we're talking about the propaganda that is the mask behind the true reason as to why the Taliban is implementing governance in this way. I believe that there is a reason that we don't know, and this reason is written in the dialects and in the dialects and in the religious scripts as to why they are doing this. But all we know is that what comes out as more pompous and as more powerful is the military and arsenal strength that these Taliban men have against women. But however, these Taliban men cannot pose the same militant and arsenal strength against men who hold the same militant and arsenal strength in other countries. So hence you find that their own women are actually trying to reach out to the rest of the world, which obligates a position of responsibility to from those men who hold the same militant power, to actually seize these men who are violating women's rights and human rights right in front of the world. So these women serve as trophies, these women serve as puppets, and these women serve as propaganda that convinces, not maybe necessarily the rest of the world, but other jihadists, that the possibility and the reality of women being oppressed is really happening. So, which means that the instructions and the laws of the religious manuscripts are really being implemented, and therefore we should go forth, us as jihadists, and destroy the world and explode ourselves and explode other monuments and be involved in this terrorism, hardcore sheer warfare. It's not even organizational terrorism, but I mean, it is straight up warfare. So we've had, I mean, I'm from South Africa, and in the communities in the central business district of the Johannesburg areas, we have people from Afghanistan, people from Pakistan, who have been protesting, trying to get the attention of world leaders like myself and others, as to say, please help out in the East. There are monsters and there are terrorists who are using the Muslim religion in a wrong way. As much as we do not understand and we cannot read the Muslim dialect, but we do know that Allah and Muhammad are people with very entities and deities with very good hearts. We know of the Muslim code, of the 2,000-year-old Muslim code, that speaks that that it is obligated to help someone in need. We know how Muhammad actually expressed his love for Allah and his people through love. So the Taliban is not practicing love within their religious governance. With all that being said, what the women are going through, it's very easy to speak a lot of hot air, as some of us may only fight in that way. But upon closer analysis, you ask yourself, what other hardships are these women going through? And without beating about the bush, it's very important for us to actually hit the bullseye when we come to combating these issues. I mean, there's fears of rape, the sex trade, and female indoctrination to woman discrimination as the status quo in which the country Afghanistan is built on. So, for example, if the status quo in South Africa says that the priority of when it comes to politics is black people, in this context, the priority is to make women feel inferior. That is a status quo. Men are stronger, women are inferior. And with that being said, because everything, especially governance, is under the umbrella of the Muslim religion, it is very difficult for a woman to understand when she's actually being raped and when she's actually having consensual sex. It is very difficult for a woman to actually understand when she's actually being sold illegally for a sex trade, and as compared to when she actually has a legit job. So because of the religion is the umbrella, the woman being in fear of men is actually the real true politics that are happening here. Because I mean, with a woman who never gets to see the outside world and is raised her whole life with this religion, she believes that it is supposed to be like that. She is supposed to be afraid of a man. And if she receives a man who does not instill fear in her, then she does not have an orthodox proper man. And then a woman who is raised to be inferior to men, when it's time for her to actually speak out against it, and it's time for actually to actually identify where she's actually being oppressed, the Muslim religion is going to put her in a position where she believes that she is wrong for speaking out against it because she is meant to be inferior to men. So this is a human rights violation issue that we are facing. And look, the threat here is bigger than just the isolated situation or isolated issue that is happening in Afghanistan. But the threat is it's actually religious terrorism that can infect gullible members of the world across the entire planet, especially when it comes to democracy. So many leaders have been placed in a position where they have to tolerate injustices, because tolerating those injustices mean you are allowing democracy to be practiced, which is where the ends of justice are normally broken, because the fine line between democracy and punishment are very distorted by the lack of responsibility that we play in issues like these across the world. International reactions concerning this cry out. There's Muslims around the world. Do Muslim men condone this? And if so, should our westernized and African women be worried about this indoctrination? Should our African women be worried about this indoctrination to woman inferiority? Should we be worried? Should our Western white woman, Caucasian woman, be worried about this indoctrination to woman inferiority, to this chauvinism? Should we be worried about showing democratic and diplomatic relationships between Christians and Muslims in this instance? Are we the naive, gullible ones who believe that maybe Muslims who are not practicing this regime as harshly as the Taliban are not for this regime? Is it possible that the rest of the Muslim community around the world is covertly condoning what's going on in the Afghanistan? I think that is a bigger question that I'm actually making this video for, because I'd like to know where some of my Muslim friends stand, and some of my Muslim friends stand in this regard. And bearing in mind that not all Muslims are white. There you have white Muslims. Not all Muslims are Indian. You have white Muslims, you have black Muslims, Indian, African Muslims, colored Muslims. So I would just like to know, as a world leader, if us who are Christian, do we need to worry about the clashes of gods and the clashes of deities in this instance? Am I an enemy of a Muslim as a Christian? That is what I'd like to know, and I think the rest of the world would pretty much like to know that. So these are a lot of the politics that are surrounding a simple garment called the hijab. So whether we condone this as the West or interfere, what responsibility do we have to account to? Especially when we consider that there are westernized Christian women marrying Muslim men. Imagine Paris Hilton, Giselle Bundchen, Kate Moss wearing a hijab and not being allowed to model or vote or work. What is our role here now that Afghan women are trying to reach out to the world for help? Um, well, first and foremost, we need to ask ourselves that to what end and how is the end going to look? To what end is the Taliban using this style of governance to? How far is it going to go? If they've already lost 700,000 jobs in the first week, which was last year, and we're now halfway through the year of 2022. To what end are they obliterating it to a desert? I mean, the educational institutions concerning the political styles, what are they doing? Because the Taliban isn't really that intelligent. It's actually a group of peasants, farmers, even then, sustenance farmers, fishermen, if so to speak, and rejects of society who have not been able to make it up in the world and conform to what we call democratic civilization, who have been so hard-headed and stubborn about not conforming to the new earthly laws, which we call democracy. Is their power profound? Which is why I was asking earlier on, is this Taliban actually being condoned by other Muslims? Thus far, it's starting to look like that to me, the more we discuss it. But I mean, I have a friend, and my friend has a sister, and they are white and they are English, right? So, with this being said, my friend wasn't really entirely happy with this newfound relationship between his sister and this Muslim husband. I grew up with the sister. We grew up together in the same high school, primary school, high school, the same era, and it's just very difficult for me to see her conforming to a hijab. My name is King Sakhile Mthembu, the founder and owner of Private Government for Umbrella. Thank you.